So, I've spent the past probably 3 days now between work and doing other things, basically going through and watching every episode of anything Tokyo Ghoul that exists. So just going, one into Route A, into Re, and there's a lot I have to say about just the regular Tokyo Ghoul, just season 1. I think there's a lot it does right, and something I genuinely like, which I definitely didn't feel getting into the next 2 seasons. It definitely felt like it was just lacking something of the first one. And there's a lot I could say about the first season. There's a lot of potential topics that I was thinking about, but one that really stuck out to me. It might just be because it's at the end of the series, but this whole time I had one idea in mind, and I saw this and just kind of changed to it. It was just something that stuck with me, and that's how you know that it was done right, is because it stuck with me. Now, what I'm talking about is the Kanaki's torture scene that comes in between episodes 11 and 12. Kind of starts in one and leads into the other. But one of the things I think that was really good about this scene was there were a lot of specifics. There were a lot of things that even after I watched it and going through 24 more episodes of this series that still immediately stood out to me that hadn't just got pushed out, with all the other info. I think that's something that's very strong for this scene, something that really makes it stick, because there's certain things that you will remember about it that'll bring it back up, and that's the mark of a powerful scene, that it leaves an impression that, as someone who one day hopes to be telling my own stories and making my own, ideas and storylines and such, it's something that has some possibility of an influence. And that's definitely the mark of something, of a good, powerful scene that you're going to remember. And that's obviously not excluding the fact that all of these specifics are very fucked up in their own way as well. I'm going to start with the thing that actually stood out the most to me was that he has them count backwards from 1000 to 7, and obviously it's explained in Kanki's thoughts that it's to, obviously he referring to Jason again, I think I forgot to say that, but obviously the scene where Jason is, torturing Kaneki here, to get the names out there, and specifics since I'm talking about him, and Jason not being his actual name, but the, name he goes by, whatever, let's get into it. So he has him count backwards from 1000 to 7. It's explained it's to keep him sane. It's to keep his brain working, give him something to focus on, so that the torture stays fun for Jason, really. So that it's not just, kind of eventually slipping into like just dealing with it, that he's still sane, his brain's still working and processing all of this. And so it obviously has that grounded reason of being specific, but it's also just, it's something you're going to remember. It's because it's very, they make a point of it, of count backwards from 1000, counting down 7 every time. And they go, 993 and keep coming back from there. And it also works in another way of having it show, not tell, through that specific. At no point do they go, how long has it been? Or at no point does he say, now that we've been in here for 3 hours, because he doesn't have to ask, because he can just say, what number did you get to? And Kaneki, I believe, says 500 something. So there's no, base. They don't have to have that obvious, like, ooh, we're gonna make the audience know how long it's been by this. It has this more fucked up specific reason that also works to help forward that point as well, of the length of time. Another specific that we get into is before we learn exactly what Jason is doing to him, we see his black nail, something that especially stands out. It's a very, contrasting look. So we know that something is happening to his fingers and toes, but we don't know how, and there's also other signs of it as well. Just, you can see the transition of his skin, and we learn what's being used through another specific. From episode 1, we see the weapon or tool that Jason uses, being that almost like set of pliers, but it's kind of, bulky and looks very heavy and weighty. And it's something that's also grounded into the show. It's something we've seen him using, and we see it again here. And he, says, or we hear through Kaneki's thoughts, that he's been ripping his fingers and toes off, letting them grow back, and doing it again. He has a very specific method he's going through. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he's doing it over and over and over again. With, we see close-ups of this tool. It gives us a better image of how it's happening, what it would feel like, and it's just this visceral reaction because it's something specific. It gives your brain something to work on to go, ooh, that would be terrible. Another little note that just kind of forwards his character of being a torturer, of knowing what he's doing, is he doesn't just put a centipede in Kaneki's ear. It's so fucked up. But he specifically says the Chinese red-headed centipede. Like, he has these, he holds on to these, and he keeps them for these situations. Like, it's so specific and ugh. And also, keeping along that same vein, something that helps forward this a little bit as well, this kind of goes outside the realm of specifics, but I will just be talking about the scene in general as well, is it brings in a fear of bugs, which is something that a lot of people have. That's something that's based in some primal, origins, fear of potential danger, things that could be poisonous. Kind of the same thing that goes along with snakes here. It's that better safe than sorry feeling. I forget exactly what it's called, but humans have that, where our brains tend to err on the side of danger rather than safety, because it's better to be safe than sorry. It invokes a disgusting feeling. And again, bringing that into it is something to help forward it as well. And back to another specific here, we have the specifics of their relationship, even if it's not directly, Kaneki and Jason having a relationship, having really met before, with him having Rize inside of him, with Jason kind of being a one-sided connection here, something that we also see forwarded with some specific close-up shots of his hand on his shoulder kind of sliding slowly down his arm, these weirdly intimate feelings from one side, based in the specificities, that's not a word, but I'm making it a word, of the show, of something we've seen from episode 1. It's grounded into it. It's not just some character brought in just to torture Kaneki. It's a character that's been a point in this show who's now just doing this to him. It also, one lack of a specific that it benefits from, is there's no reason for it. He's not trying to get info out of him. He's not, trying to get the whereabouts of their base or where someone is. He's just doing it because it's the one thing we don't have a specific reason for. And it's one of the most fucked up things to not have a reason for, where he specifically says, we don't need you anymore, so I'm just gonna torture you. He's doing it just because. And that's so fucked up in its own right. And one other thing that is on my list here, but I jumped around a little bit so I didn't get to it, is there's more specifics in the way he's going about things. When he injects the serum or whatever you call it into him to prevent his Kagane from coming out, he's very he knows again exactly what he's doing. He goes, this can only go through the mucous membrane, and we know that he's about to give Kaneki a shot through his eyelid, basically. And again, it's bringing a specific fear of needles into it. It's just very well done. And getting out of the specifics here into just some reasons why the scene is good in general is it's very fucking intense. We have a buildup of intensity when Kaneki repeats, I believe he's saying again or over again and again and again. He keeps saying it, it gets faster and faster, and he's saying it more and more strained and intense. Speaking of strained, the shots where Jason will lean back and we just see his eyes wide and strained. Same thing with Kaneki, where they get wider, they're very strained. Fast cuts between these things, focusing on the eyes. There's a lot of intensity that's done very well, and then it's contrasted completely with this slow, just calming nature of Kaneki's backstory. But it's just very calm. It's these childhood memories, something very innocent. There's a pure, just white background when he's talking with Rize. She speaks in this very soft spoken voice. And whenever they start talking, at least a few times, it's her hand reaching out and grabbing his face, like he immediately stops crying, and it's this connection and intimacy. And then it jumps right back into the intense torture, and it's just so well done. The only thing that I think is done poorly about it is he says, I'm going about this wrong, and he wants to break him mentally instead of physically, so he brings in these two throwaway characters, and he has to pick which one's going to die, and he doesn't. And it would have worked if they were characters that were more grounded into the show, if we knew them in some way other than just, hey, these guys were here last episode. So that was a little bit, it was a good idea, but just didn't have the follow through. They weren't connected to him in any way, so it wasn't as powerful. And it just all culminates in the end to this complete flip to confidence, where every time we've seen Reze, she's been on top of him, reaching for him and kind of being the one in control of the situation, and eventually he's on top of her. It's this complete flip where, everything turns red. He's confident. He says, I'm not wrong. It's the world that is. And it's a complete flip in his character and just a great ending, a great climax to this whole situation. And obviously I did some, a little bit of research for this to look at some other torture season anime and noticed that a lot of the powerful ones and all the ones people were mentioning, again, had these specifics. It was specific relationships. They were doing it because they knew this character. They were doing it to break this character by killing this person in front of them. They were doing it in a very specific way. It was, I'm going to keep hitting you here over and over again. I'm going to use this tool. They had these specifics, and some of the weaker ones didn't have these. I specifically went and I remember this one because I like to shit on this show. I looked up the one for Fairy Tail because I remembered once the show, it was never good, but once it turned especially bad, and we got into the Tartaros arc and everything, there's the scene where Ares is being tortured, and there's a lot of talking, and there's a lot of like, oh, I'm going to double your sense of pain again. And they don't actually show it at all. The screaming might get a little more intense, but they're just telling you something. It's not grounded into, anything formally of the show. It's not specific. They're just saying something, and we're supposed to believe it. There's no specific connection there. These characters just know each other because one's a hero and one's the villain. It's not, oh, you're from episode 1, we've seen you, we've known you've been lurking this whole time. It's, oh, you're the villain of this arc, and you're torturing me because you want to get the location of this character. And it just lacks what the Tokyo Ghoul scene had, and it's just such, the Tokyo Ghoul torture scene is so good. It's like a full episode of it, and I'm counting the bits with Reze in there as well, because they are a very important contrast to this scene. Because it works like a roller coaster. It takes you up and down and up and down, and it keeps going and getting more intense. There's, build-ups, it arcs over, it throws you down the hill, and then you have a little bit of a lull. You're just riding along a little bit with the Reze scenes. You go back up, and you come back down. And it's beautifully crafted, super well done. And again, just absolute specifics of it, these things that stand out in your mind, that the specific type of scorpion, the fact that he puts it in his ear. We see the, stark contrast of the nails. We know what tool he's using. We know exactly what he's doing with it. The number 7, the counting backwards. There's a lot of memorable things, and that's something very good. In a lesser show, or in a lesser torture scene, you'll just hear about it. You'll just see, like, especially in character backstories, like, oh, I was, captured by the enemy and tortured, and you'll see like a few seconds of it. And then there's stuff like this that's just beautifully well done. And they also like mirror it well, where Kaneki starts doing some of the, Jason things. He has the finger snap. He makes him start counting backwards. And they build it up over like a few episodes here of, showing how this happened to the Jason guy, and that's why he's like this. Now it's happening to Kaneki, and they build it up into this, oh no, he's gonna become like this guy thing. And then they show it a little bit, and even now, as I'm saying this, I'm like imitating the little like finger snap that he does, because it's something specific, and they make a note of putting it out there and putting it in your mind. And it was just something very, very well done. And I guess the lesson at the end here is, if you're gonna torture someone, make it specific. And don't torture people. Don't do that. I didn't tell you to torture people. Just disclaimer.